SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeeps.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity.
What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sort of lathe.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast. We are dealing with some solid technical difficulties, specifically because
hardware related.
my microphone doesn't want to be in the right spot at the moment.
What are you even trying to do?
I don't know. I've extended all the way out. Now it's just like it's the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It keeps falling over. Every time. I don't know. Jeffrey, nobody sits in this seat in our morning podcast, and I wanted to be closer to you. Really, I wanted to be
That's
in
the
a
problem.
snuggler.
You notice I'm like hunched in the corner over
I
here.
wanted to be
just trying
basically
hide
at a
away.
snuggler here.
Okay. So, anyways,
My name is Neil with
go ahead. With who?
SFJ 4x4, Simpson Family Jeeps.
And he's sure of that.
And what podcast are we doing?
This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com.
There you go.
Yeah, see, we in the early podcast, which if you don't see, I keep moving it. I think my cord is up underneath. There we go. Scott has. I'm sorry if I just blew your eardrums out.
Did Scott literally just put his foot on it?
Literally put his foot on my mic stand for me.
Adapt and overcome.
Adapt and overcome.
Okay, I will look into ceiling
if you
mounts.
did
next time.
not know, Jeffrey and I, we shoot a secondary podcast on entrepreneurship, leadership, just all around being a good human being called The American Hustle. And so we were shooting that this morning. But I sit in Scott's seat. Jeffrey sits in the producer's seat. So nobody sits in my seat. And we had a special interest story that Jeffrey had an opportunity to sit down and do last week with a really cool individual. And we're going to be bringing that to your ear holes in the near future. But somehow that's the studio mic's got all cattywampus. We have a ton of
just blame
updates.
you.
We have a ton of updates to get to. So we should introduce ourselves. If this is your first time joining us, you may or may not know these gentlemen seated with me in Grandma's Couch Studio.
Jeff Shermani.
The Italian Stallion.
And the maddest mad scientist / Mike Holder Downer today.
You are an excellent mic holder downer. Honestly, it's probably the thing you excel at the most now.
If you don't know, if you're a new listener, every episode Scott has a new title, and that today happens to be Mike Holder Upper.
Yeah.
So
Downer.
there is something unique about today's stream,
Okay.
and something that we are trying out and hope to use going
Continue to
forward.
expand upon, right?
And it looks like somebody has figured this out already.
I think 3 people have, haven't they? Or is that wrong? It says 3 and then it has 7.
So at least one has commented on there.
Oh.
So when we look at our comments this morning, we're going to see that we have a differentiation between Facebook and YouTube.
Oh.
Because we're live on YouTube.
Live from YouTube, SFJ Studios, the Grandma Couch Studio.
So again, Patreons, this is one of the things that you have supported by paying for that Patreon subscription, and we're able to now pay for the multi-streaming so that we can be on Facebook and YouTube. And if it goes well, there's a chance we might try it on TikTok live as well. So, we're trying to expand that so that our listening audience can watch live with more options.
Correct. Yeah, our TikTok audience has exploded over the last year or so, and we keep getting some good demand from that level. And ultimately, not everybody wants to log on to Facebook, has the ability to log on to Facebook, whatever. And so we are broadcasting on our SFJ 4x4 TV channel, and then this podcast, per the usual, will get recorded and put up on the I Speak Jeep podcast channel as well.
And what's really cool about the YouTube one is we've actually had a lot of listeners ask us if we could stream on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we were not able to. We weren't paying for the price to be able to do that. Now we have. We're there. We're excited to bring that to our listeners, especially those that had been asking. And as you look, I also added a counter on our stream so that we can actually show how many are currently logged into Facebook and YouTube as we're live, just so that everybody can see that number.
Oh, that's fun.
That's awesome.
I did not realize that. So, the more you know, then like rainbows.
Yes.
There it is. So going through comments this morning, we've got Justin Beto saying good morning.
Morning, Justin.
Amy Brown, good morning, guys. Justin Beto, good morning, beautiful. I don't know why he did it twice, but apparently he really likes you.
I think that was for Scott.
Oh, maybe it was for Scott. Daddy Jeep saying, morning, guys. Side note, we are going to do a trail spotlight today, and Daddy Jeep will be joining us remotely for that. Keith is saying, morning, guys. I think that's supposed to say morning. Giaga Jeepers, good morning. Chuck, what a team.
That's because adapt and overcome. Scott, the holder downer.
And then Roy saying, good morning, fellas. Chuck said something about something Facebook till he get banned from YouTube. So you can interpret that as you will, or you can log in and see the comments.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You can jump on them there yourself. If you are joining us in your holes at a later date, on the service floor, driving truck across America, while you're exercising, that kind of stuff. We appreciate you prioritizing this time with us. You are our primary target audience, and you are the individuals who are, have taken this podcast and made it a global sensation, if you will. And it was voted number one off-road Jeep podcast in the universe by my mom, just so we're all on the same page. So
Obviously unbiased.
without question.
Very unbiased.
With that said, we have a ton of updates. As you already mentioned, Rob Morgan, Daddy Jeep, will be joining us live at the end of the program. Will be telling us about an upcoming wheeling opportunity for everyone, one that's been going on for a few years now, but he'll be updating kind of on the changes and the cool stuff that's happening there. We have some updates on the ugly sign that is located in the studio. If you are a listener and you did not get to see the tape sign on the beautiful new focal wall behind Jeffrey and I, you'll know that it is, or you'd like to know that it is a ugly yellow masking tape, poorly done rendition of a sign that we're going to be putting here very soon.
But it makes a great t-shirt.
But it makes a great t-shirt. We're going to tell you about that in a second. We're going to make sure we run through our weekend updates, where the Jeep life has taken us. Understand that we have all built, wheeled, and done some pretty crazy and cattywampus stuff with our own vehicles, our Jeep platforms over the years. This is a Jeep lifestyle podcast and where the Jeep life takes us. So some of our updates will be automotive, some will be DIY, some will just be family and good news. And so you'll hang in there for that. We are shifting the topics. Last week, we teased you that we were going to start our Race Jeep series. We're not. We're actually had an opportunity. We're going to be talking about seller's remorse or seller's guilt as well.
Yep.
And we'll be talking a little bit about that and why we pivoted. The Race Jeep series will be coming up in the future, and we
have solidly committed that the next 2 episodes will be about race Jeeps.
That is correct. And then ultimately we'll go back into the Art of series that we're doing once a month going forward. And again, it's valuable to note that we've plowed back into the podcast for our listeners, for our viewers, because of the wild success. We thank you. We thank our Patreons for continuing to invest in us and this podcast. A lot of people have noted we could be out on the service floor working on Jeeps, selling parts, doing that kind of stuff. And instead, we are prioritizing sharing of information with you all. And so we thank you for your added support in making this podcast possible, and kind of helping further the construction of the studio and the reach of this podcast. Well, I suppose without exact further ado, what's happened in your guys' world since?
Do we want to talk about what happened in our world personally, or in the Jeep world that is important news?
Well, I was going to do both, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, as of Friday the 13th, there is
a great date. By the
that
way,
was a perfect date for it.
Do you know there's another Friday the 13th in this calendar year yet to come?
That's awesome.
Yeah, I saw it. I think it's December.
So, the state of Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, was
it's not a state; it's a commonwealth.
was the
I don't know
only
what the difference is. But.
the only state in the United States left to make doors off illegal.
Was it the only one left?
It was the only one left.
Oh,
As of Friday the 13th, doors off are now legal in PA. So that means if you're going to ban them, you can drive there with your doors off and not have to worry about it
if you're
anymore.
a PA resident, right? I didn't worry about it before, anyways. I'm registered in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, well, there was
They were
issues.
still potentially pulling people over. I recognize that. I do.
Yeah. So, with that said, the only stipulations that they imposed on this is that the doors have to be designed to be removed.
I'm sorry, Patriot
Yes.
owners and
XJ.
Renegade and XJ owners.
Yeah,
There has to be side mirrors on,
Nah, that's a standard.
that's fair.
and rear passengers, all occupants must be seatbelted.
Let's be honest, folks. I'm not today's years old, but I was Friday days old of last week when I learned that adults don't have to be buckled up in the back seat.
I knew that.
Everybody apparently knew that. I just
He's like, I said about having to be buckled in the back seat, and he's like, well, that's a normal thing anyways. I'm like, no. And Greg's like, not in PA. And he's like, what?
and Davey said not in Ohio either.
Yeah.
I had no idea. But I
Over
mean,
18, you're allowed to be a ping pong ball inside the vehicle as it rolls over.
Yeah. So
That's so
I'm going to
fascinating
pose
to
this
me.
question to you. If you didn't know that, did you know that it's legal to ride in the bed of the pickup truck
I knew it was legal to ride in the bed of the
without
pickup truck.
seatbelts?
Without seatbelts. I know it's illegal.
What's the difference?
I don't know. I don't know. I it's funny. I knew the pickup truck bed, but you look at our diesel pusher, our RV, it literally says the passengers are supposed to remain seated and buckled up while in the vehicle's in motion. And
That's recommended.
And we have seatbelts, through along the couch has literally 3 seatbelts, and it's a couch that you could be laying on, lounging on while you're driving.
It also says not the cruise control doesn't make it steer while you go make a sandwich.
Yeah, well, that's because somebody was an idiot, put it on cruise control, and attempted to go make a sandwich.
Well,
But I was Friday days old when I learned that.
And not all-
just buckle up, folks. That's
Not-
not that big of a deal. Just buckle up.
And not all states require the rear, or some states do require the rear passengers to be seatbelted as well. So that pusher that you have does require that.
Well,
To
and
be-
I mean,
to be
ultimately,
manufactured.
see, and I think that's funny because like seatbelt laws, right? Let's say that West Virginia does. I'm just make this up. We know that West Virginia probably doesn't. But
They're like, what's a seatbelt?
so let's say you go from Pennsylvania where it was not required, and then you go to West Virginia, it's now required, right? Seatbelt laws are state to state. You're supposed to occupy. You're supposed to follow, those rules in that state. But I know, like, if my tires stick out and I'm registered in the state of Ohio, my vehicle is legally registered in the state of Ohio. It does not matter what it is in Pennsylvania, because we dealt with this at a litigious level in the automotive community years ago when they ran Ultimate Adventure. And Ultimate Adventure, for any of our people who are new to the off-road industry, took some of the most gnarly built vehicles, and it was multiple days of on-road and off-road trail, right? And so the vehicle it was different than, say, a tough truck competition where it was just all about, tough truck or something comparable was just off-road prowess. UA required you to put a whole bunch of miles on your vehicle. And so they got pulled over a couple different times because they basically had glorified buggies running through different states. And they were like, this is legal in New Mexico or whatever state it was that just didn't care.
I remember
at
a
that
couple of
time.
them had the quickie mud flaps because in their state they had to have mud flaps. So
But the tire could stick out or something wild. You know what I mean?
it's and that in a nutshell is why it's so confusing to try
It
to be
is.
legal in an automotive
community.
in,
Right.
in America.
Yeah, super interesting. Things that are not legal, but not exactly illegal either. The mini Jeeps, right? And I thought it'd take an opportunity to talk about the mini Jeep giveaway that happened from Freedom Crawlers. I want to give an update and a big shout out to this particular club. who kind of endeavored on this about 3-4 month giveaway with a mini Jeep. And my concept of not exactly legal or illegal is we've seen a resurgence or a surgence in people running around in golf carts and, some side by sides, because they have turn signals and they have headlights and they're putting off road or they're putting ATV license plates on them and then they're driving them on the road. None of that's actually legal in certain areas because of how that vehicle qualifies.
I think they changed some of that lately.
What's that?
Some of those rules, but I could be wrong.
So it's still area specific.
It's area specific.
There are, like, for example, in parts of PA, you can legally license plate it, and as long as it has lights and turn signals and all those things, you can plate it and drive it on the roads. Then there's other areas where certain roads are not allowed.
Certain roads are not allowed, and that's almost still universal, right? And so, like, let's say we take, a 2000 TJ. I'm gonna make something up, right? Clean. You purchase this vehicle. You can drive this vehicle on one of the state off highway vehicle use trails. You can then get off that, go to the convenience store. You can then run up to your campsite. You can kind of go anywhere you want. And then you can jump onto one of the interstates and go 70, 80 miles per hour. You can go anywhere you want, right? In your Jeep side-by-side, if you will. In your golf cart or your real side-by-side or your mini Jeep, even though you have headlights, you have turn signals,
you might have doors,
you might even have little doors,
seatbelts,
you might have seat belts, you might have a license plate, and you may even carry insurance.
You can't take it on the interstate.
You can't take it on the interstate for guarantees. And certainly I could speak exactly to the laws in our local area. There's actually only about 9 roads you're legally allowed on. Yet we see golf carts with all of the appropriate accoutrements and side-by-sides and mini Jeeps, honestly, because they have a lot of that.
We may drive them on those.
We may actually even drive them on those roads.
Can't confirm or deny that.
No. But that doesn't mean you're actually doing that legally, because those rules are actually established at a higher level than they're at like a city council or a local township ordinance level. So, long story short, cool mini Jeeps that are out there. It was given away on September 11th. So we had, a talking point about that. They did that intentionally in memoriam and kind of making a positive out of a challenging day.
And they were live on Facebook at 6 p.m. doing this.
Yep.
Do you happen to know how much they raised? Because I do.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Over $11,000.
Yep.
Pretty remarkable. And with that, they are a legally registered nonprofit club, blah, blah, blah,
it was
blah.
all done by the book.
All done by the book. Great leadership and organization there. And they are systematically giving that money, the raised amount of money, out to the community, both local and regional, potentially national charitable donations. Super cool thing that they did there. They went ahead and they drew the name, and the individual who won it was actually local enough, within about 15-20 minutes.
So they just delivered it right to them.
You know what those people did?
They donated it back.
They donated it to a different charity.
Yeah, to another charity.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
They took it, and within a nominal period of time, there is another charitable event happening, not Jeep related, and they took and they donated it to this other charity to be one of the grand prizes for their event coming up.
Wow.
I thought, what an incredible way for them to pay it forward.
Yeah, they said the people that won it thought it was awesome how much that vehicle had given to the charitable thing, and they wanted to continue that path.
Yeah. I mean, it's the little Jeep. It's the little Jeep that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
I think that is so cool.
It's very cool.
And it raised a bunch of money, and I understand it was a couple of sorts that won it, and they enjoyed it. Took some nice, photo ops in it.
I drove around a little bit because I saw some of the video.
Little bit.
Of that. Yeah.
Yep. And then they more or less immediately donated it to this other charity. So if you're out there and you're disappointed you didn't get a chance to win it, you may have another opportunity.
Yeah.
when we figure out those details, maybe we can link it in the description or something to that effect, and you can try and get the tickets again. The little Jeep that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
And speaking of giving, I had made the statement that the ugly sign behind us, that we were looking for some folks to adopt a sign, and that we had a number of people reach out and say, "Hey, we're in," right? And so we took a couple days to try and figure out how best to solicit donations to adopt and get a new sign for the studio. And I love the fact that you all, our listeners, had such an ownership of this podcast. I thought that was so cool that you said, "Hey, I want to contribute." We put up a GoFundMe campaign, which was, oftentimes you think a GoFundMe is, some type of charity or when you're in need or whatnot. But we ended up using that just because of the platform for giving made it very clean, made it very legal, if you will. And we put up that campaign and we hit our fundraising goal within 24 hours.
Yeah.
I mean,
unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts. The sign has been ordered. We're not going to tell you about it. I mean, obviously you can kind of say, you can kind of understand what it probably says. I love Broncos. And
well, Davey ordered it, so it might actually come in saying
it
that.
might.
He trolled us so bad.
So hard last week on a number of Bronco related things. So,
I mean, even our documents that we use in house, he was changing them to put Bronco stuff on.
What a mess. What a savage.
He changed our name to SFB.
He did on a number of documents we were working on internally last week. So anyways, thank you so much for folks who have contributed positively to that, and allowed that sign to be purchased, and absolutely exceeded our expectations. Now, with that said, there's a number of people who wanted to continue to invest in the podcast, and we had a super funny, great opportunity to make a t-shirt that says "I helped build the sign."
On the front, and the front is the tape sign that Davey poorly taped up.
Yes, and we actually have we're giving those in retroactive to all of the people who donated over $50 towards the sign, and then folks who want to purchase that shirt for $50. Obviously, the shirt's not worth $50. We know that, but that's part of the contribution. It says you got to help contribute and have some ownership over this podcast studio that allows us to reach so many people in the automotive and off-road community. So thank you. So lots of big updates. Not that I want to keep on doing stuff, but how is the personal lives? How is the personal projects? Anything invaluable to to report?
So Saturday after work, we went ahead and went up to a local. They have 200 small vendors called the Village Peddler. That was pretty cool. We got to wander around there. Got to see one of.
Did you take 36?
No.
Ah.
We were conserving fuel for my neck. I'll get to that.
Okay.
But took the Jeep and was able to walk around, have a good.
It's sad that conserves fuel.
Well, we'll also
miles
get to that.
per gallon. I don't know.
But the cool part is it was at the farm park, and we were able to go see the animals, and that is as part of our entrance fee. So not only did we get 200 vendors to wander around and look at, we were also able to take the kids to the playground, go see the animals and that kind of stuff, and it was in Kirkland, Ohio. So then on Sunday we got up and we pulled the 36 out of the garage, and we went all the way down 193 to Youngstown in the back way. Went to the Rust Belt Revival show.
That was this weekend.
Yep. And car drove great. We put over 100 miles on it there and back. And ironically, I was really kind of concerned, 40s design motor, 2 carburetors, 378 gears, 3-speed no overdrive, doing 55-ish, 60 miles an hour. That we were going to need at least 2. It was going to be like a 2-tank trip.
The
way the gas gauge currently works on the 36 is when I fill it all the way up, the needle disappears.
Okay.
And then slowly it'll come down. And then when you see it, it's then going to come down pretty fast.
Sure.
And I really expected on the way down to see the needle at some point, and it never showed. We got to the show, hung out, did all of our stuff. We're on our way back, still no needle.
Maybe you broke it.
I was like, I had crossed my mind.
Right.
And so we stopped at a restaurant, had a nice lunch, continued on. Finally, we got back up into Asheville County, and I finally saw the needle.
Huh.
So you got better gas mileage on it.
The car did awesome. It was great.
That's cool.
We went from there to our local Lakeshore Park, did the cruise in there. It was amazing, the temperature, how hot it was in Youngstown versus how nice and
Temperate it was
comfortable
up on the lake.
which was very much appreciated after cooking down there. So
How was the Rust Belt revival? Was it a 1-day event or a 2-day event?
it's a 1-day event.
Okay, so just Sunday.
Yep, they packed the place. There was cars everywhere. We actually even got blocked in for a couple hours because there was just no parking spaces. It was awesome. There were at least 2 more 36s there, a 3-window coupe and a 5-window coupe. I was able to talk to the 3-window owner, and he gave me some tips and tricks on how he did a couple things. Beautiful blue, like a light blue paint job that his wife did the body work and sprayed. And I would have told you this thing could have gone to a national show and
Really?
probably placed. Beautiful. They had done everything on the car themselves.
Wow.
It had a 409 W Chevy motor in it.
Yeah.
But it was their what they were trying to accomplish was a 60s hot rod.
Okay.
And this is the best part. He had owned this car, I think he said like 25 or 30 years. For those that don't know, in 36 Ford value, right now a 3-window coupe is probably about as high as you can get. Compared to my car, which is the most production vehicle, being a 2-door sedan with trunk. So my car, about 10 grand to 20 for really nice cars.
Ouch.
Yeah, I know.
Ouch.
I'm really upside down. Anyway,
Boy.
a 3-window coupe actively always transfers about 47 to 70K. He paid $1,400 for this car when he bought it.
30 years ago.
But still.
Right. Right.
So that
You
was
could have bought
awesome.
2 or 3 cars by now.
Oh,
You want to
man.
talk about that? Or
No,
okay.
I'm
No.
no,
All right.
it's-
That's fine.
It's
In the comments, Bill McWilliams said, "Good morning, guys."
Morning, Bill.
Brian Ritchie said, "Good morning. New studio's looking great."
Thank you.
And Sue Ballard, "Morning, guys. Nice job on the studio."
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. We're trying. We're doing it for you guys, right? So, Jeffrey, you do anything productive and interesting, exciting? Make Halloween decorations?
So I wanted to.
Okay.
That was the plan for this weekend.
I
It was a
figured it would be.
beautiful weekend.
It was
It
gorgeous.
was.
Oh
But
my
you
God,
know what
perfect.
happened because of Friday the 13th?
What's that?
Meh.
Saturday while we were at the shop, my computer decided it wanted to die.
Wah, wah, wah.
Complete blue screen of death. Rebooted it. It said, nope, can't reboot. Rebooted again. Nope, can't reboot. Tried everything I could. And finally, I had to literally reinstall Windows 11 onto the computer. And I spent the whole weekend rebuilding the computer software essentially because there was a corrupted system file that appears may have been corrupted early on when I first got the laptop, and somehow it didn't
Oh.
actually impact us. It just kept getting worse.
And it's valuable to know, folks, that you're listening to us right now on Jeffrey's computer.
Yep.
So, I
Yeah,
mean,
my
all of our
computer is-
interface, it's running the studio, and then he picks it up and he goes and does his front end duties with the same unit.
Yeah.
So
So I was
pretty valuable that we have it, honestly.
yeah, I was in a panic Saturday. I literally didn't leave till about an hour after the shop closed on Saturday because I was letting it do some reinstall stuff and scans, and then I took it home.
Right.
Spent much of the weekend.
Because we know you don't want to disrupt it. Once it starts doing that, you don't want to mess with it.
Yeah, I wasn't unplugging it. But once it got through that and it was just doing the final system check scan, at that point it already addressed some of the issues. So I unplugged it, took it home, and then I was downloading the other software that we use to do this and to do this podcast, and it kept giving me system errors and saying that there was a system file that was missing or corrupted or whatever. And I dug down the rabbit hole. I researched the heck out of this error code and turned out that there's a program that you can download, or you can either manually fix it if you know source code well enough. I don't. I don't think anybody in the shop knows source code well enough to fix a Windows operating system. So I downloaded this program. Fortunately, gave me 24-hour free access, and it went in and it repaired the system properly.
That's awesome.
And then I was able to get everything downloaded. But behind the scene tech notes, when you use an audio interface to run 4 microphones on a computer in a streaming platform, there's routing of that you have to digitally route those microphones a certain way for all 4 microphones to work, or 3 microphones in today's case. Otherwise, it only picks up 2 channels. And seeing as we use actively 3 to 4 mics, I had to fight with that this morning. I came in early this morning to continue to fight with that. So that was, in a nutshell, my majority of my weekend. When I wasn't working on that, I was working on the nonprofit. Got a lot going on with that. The event's 2 weeks out roughly.
Right.
So a lot going on there. And then we had a family birthday party for an aunt in Waterford. So we were in Erie as well, in Waterford, PA, to go to that. Spent a couple hours there seeing some family that we haven't seen in a long time. So that was nice.
Excellent. I went on Jeep Adventures in Western Pennsylvania. And I'll leave it as that.
Well, I have to add that we stripped the Jeep completely down.
Right.
Because
it was gorgeous.
It was gorgeous, and it's legal in PA, so I had to do it. I had to go that first weekend with the doors off to say that I finally did it legally. So anyways.
Perfect.
Well, did you do anything on your house this weekend?
I sort of did. And maybe we'll get to that next time around. We're pushing into our time frame to talk about today's subject, right? But like I said, I had great Jeep adventures in Western Pennsylvania. It was nice to be back in that stomping ground. Actually, pleasantly had the opportunity to Jeep wave at the Novacels. Just randomly saw them passing through one of the local towns. Just kind of one of those serendipitous things.
I feel like you randomly see them a lot.
Totally. Crashing souls, man. See them all the time. But yeah, I was out spreading the Jeep life, waving at people and sharing Jeep stories and all that kind of good stuff. So all is well there. But seller's remorse, seller's guilt. How do we come up with this, Jeffrey?
We actually had a listener and actually a previous social media manager for you, Scott Lindquist, reach out talking about a vehicle that he was reluctantly leery about selling.
He was ready to let go of it.
He was ready to let go of it, but he was worried about what if something happens right after I sell it.
Yes.
And that just sparked the fact that Scott recently sold a vehicle and was the exact same thing. I mean, almost too honest in the sales process, showed every little flaw, and then the customer bought the vehicle, happy as can be, and it still had, its little shakeups and stuff. So there's that seller's guilt. You almost feel guilty when the Jeep or the vehicle doesn't behave after you sell it.
Absolutely.
Regardless if it's your fault or not.
Right. And it's an interesting concept, and we're going to unpack it a little further as we talk today. And don't forget, you want to stay in there because we're going to be bringing on Daddy Jeep, Rob Morgan, near the end of the show to talk to us about using your Jeep in about a month or so, and how you can get out to, some trail experiences and what that, entails for you. So while we get into this concept, hang in there with us. Yeah. The idea was that, we had this inquiry. Scott had an opportunity. He says, he's got a Grand Cherokee specifically. It's a nice Jeep. We've serviced it, a handful of times over the years. It's been a good family vehicle for them. They recently upgraded to a beautiful JLU-R, and Scott has his LJ, and then they have a work truck, a company work truck that he drives. And the Grand Cherokee just sat, basically, right? We all have kind of had this experience in our own stable, if you will, of vehicles at one time or another. Going, I might use this. Oh, it wasn't that bad. I don't necessarily need to get rid of it right now, so on and so forth. And it just sat, and before you knew it, time had passed, and basically more or less a year had gone by. And Obviously, one of the worst things you could do with a vehicle is just let it sit. Honestly, a lot of people think they're preserving it. You're not. You need to at least, start it, run it a little bit, move it around the lot, put it up on jack stands. There's a bunch of things to do to store your vehicle appropriately. The worst thing you can do is kind of just let it sit in the yard, rotting away, not being used. That wasn't exactly his case, but it needed a little bit of work, and he's conscientious of that. He knows kind of the ins and outs of the vehicle, and he wants to sell it to a family friend, somebody who's, maybe in need. They're not trying to sell it for a profit. They're not trying to, make any money or recoup anything. They just basically want to pass it on and pay off whatever they need to and whatnot. So, brought it into us, but basically going, the question he posed to me, would you sell this vehicle to a family friend or a person in need that would benefit from owning this vehicle, right? And the conversation to say, we're disclosing all the service that it's had, all of the quirks, all the hiccups, all the little things. And even with disclosing that, knowing that this person who needs to purchase the vehicle at a reasonable price, and we're selling it at a reasonable price, that basically it's still a 10 plus year old vehicle, or roughly speaking, and it could break down tomorrow, right? It could continue to have problems. And does that person's expectations and experiences, do they jive with the reality of what the vehicle is itself? Right. And so that's an interesting story. And we talked last week about the one that got away, and we heard from a number of you telling us what vehicle you experienced or that got away from you. And we talked a little bit about seller's remorse, or getter-ridder's remorse. Getter-ridders of remorse. Well, I feel like that's a Scottism.
Not touching that.
That
one.
is
a Scottism.
That is.
You
It's actually bad when Scott's saying he's not touching it, because that's when you know.
Right? So what is that experience when we get rid of a vehicle, when we sell a vehicle, and now we are a little remorseful for one reason or another, And obviously we have a friend of the business, and Scott, specifically has sold a number of Jeeps to our customers. Mm-hmm. No Jeep gets out alive from me, so no vehicle gets out alive. Typically they end up in the junkyard or scrapped or parted out. I've never actually burnt one to the ground. Stop it. Did you see that Jeep Chrysler is doing a recall or a probe? There's a probe into engine fires.
And to stop production.
That's malarkey. That's because everybody right now is putting junk, garbage, LED light bars on and wiring it themselves. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
You're probing Stellantis for the wrong reasons. That's neither here nor there. So, anywho, what kind of experiences have you guys had?
Well, that's why when I sort of sell a vehicle, I try to be as honest, almost like as Jeff said, go over in detail of all the little things, because vehicles, as they age, they always get a little bit quirky. And I want them to be aware of what challenges or things they're up against. And that doesn't matter if it's the Rambler I sold earlier this year or my Jeeps that I once had. And it's I'm weird. I want the vehicle to be going to a good home. I want someone that's going to take care of it and maybe not do Neil things where it ends up in the junkyard.
Or in your backfield.
Or in my backfield.
This is so weird. That's a weird sentiment.
I don't know why, but I just always feel bad for the vehicle if that's what its future is.
Well,
So,
you do have that emotional connection with vehicles
Yeah.
to
Oh my
a
God, does he
romantic
ever.
level.
Yeah.
Does he ever?
So anyway, I want to ensure that they're going to have as good of experience as possible. They're at least going to be aware of the challenges they may face, because vehicles are just one of the worst investments you can make. As much as I enjoy
RVs, boats, I think top that, but
They do.
Same difference.
Same
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
And then that's the same thing I try to do when we have somebody come in for a restoration. I'll be like, after we get to a level, I'm like, listen, we should totally rebuild this Jeep, but you're not going to be financially upside when we get done with this. And most of the time they go, I know, I still want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And that's valuable for the rebuild process. We do it for nostalgia. We do it because of the passion of it. We don't
Yes.
do it because it makes fiscal sense
No.
necessarily. You know, and I think I've struggled. I've tried selling a couple vehicles. Like I said, usually they don't make it out alive.
No.
And I have
Very
tried
few.
very few. And I have tried in the last 2 or 3 years to sell a couple of my vehicles. And I think that I have been too honest in the process.
Meh.
That's the only thing that I can figure out, and why I have not actually been able to sell them, because I'm not asking outrageous prices. There are prices that I see listed on the Book of Faces and on Craigslist and the general marketplace as a whole. And I think to myself, okay, well, you're actually asking more than what I am currently asking for X, Y, and Z vehicle. But I'm disclosing all of the quirks and the peculiarities of that vehicle.
And I think there's, at some cases, buyers are looking at that and going, well, if they're telling me all of this, what else is wrong with it?
Boom. I think that is exactly the issue, because I think we're conditioned as a society to anticipate the fact that there's a lot worse under the surface. And so when you have, someone like what Scott has done or what I'm doing when I'm presenting, going, here's all of the bad things this vehicle has, it's actually very hard to sell it then.
And
Whereas,
I think
there's a lot of buy here, pay here lots that, they just go, oh, it's a beautiful vehicle. And then it's actually a hot piece of garbage.
Yep. And that's, I feel like it's advertising, it's media magic. You put up the listing, but as you guys said, you're very honest, and you should be when you sell a vehicle. You should, when the person's looking it over, you should take the time to show them the issues that it has. But if you post a bunch of issues online, a lot of times it turns off a person from even looking, because they expect you to tell them there's worse when they get there.
To me, you have to have the rapport. You have to start that talk back and forth, and then you tell them what is going on with it.
Correct.
You can't lead with that. You got to let them fall in love with it a little bit first.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely been
And
one of my peculiarities with it.
Yeah, and as long as you're honest in the prior to the actual writing of the contract and signing of the paperwork, then that's on the buyer.
Yep.
But if you are not telling them that information up front prior to them signing it, then yeah, you should feel guilty.
Well, and I think it's interesting. I'm going to talk about, I tried listing my big rig 2 years ago, I think, at this point, crew cab, international. It's a medium duty truck. So, for many people, it looks like a small semi. And I listed a handful of things that I felt were needing attention at that time. Mm-hmm. And realistically speaking, I mean, honest to Pete, the grand scheme of the world, we're talking about really, really trivial things like, oh, maybe it needs a seal on the pinion, right? That's what I was thinking at the time. Like, oh, it needs a pinion seal. I just haven't got around to blowing the yoke off and blah, blah, blah. The window crank, the knob is like loose in your hand, and it really irritates the tar out of me that the pad on the door itself is cracked and deteriorated, right? So the armrest itself is. I was amazed at how many people, and I listed it for a price that, as far as the market is concerned, maybe it was on the upper middle end of how these vehicles are priced, right? And I was absolutely blown away at the lack of interest in overall, because quite frankly, I know that just a couple of years prior when I bought it, there was like basically a bidding war for the truck that I got. And of course, we're talking about historic highs for truck prices and all those types of things. But then I was amazed at how many people nitpicked those little trivial things that I disclosed. Well, how bad is the seal? Like, the fact that I was willing to say that it needed a seal, well, it's like it's weeping. It's just needs a little bit of it. Like, I don't want any leaks, even though it is a 20-year-old big diesel semi-truck. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
And
that's one of those where the posting, you'd been better off to leave it vague, and it has a minor leak or two.
Right. The old adage of needs TLC, needs a little bit of, needs a new owner who's gonna, take care of it a little bit. One of those generalities.
Right.
But people expected, I don't know, that the rear end was going to follow the truck because I said, like, the fact that I knew it needed a pinion seal because I'm automotively inclined, right? Now, the fact that we literally just did like $4,000 worth of brake work, I didn't even know that it needed at the beginning of the summer. If you guys remember that story where the brakes locked up on it coming home from Bantam, and thank you to Jason and Ronnie for bailing me out in that situation, give me a trail fix. We took it into a pro shop. They rebuilt the brakes in their entirety. I had no idea. And in fact, the guy that I bought it from, I would have vouched that he said he had gone through the rear axle and the brakes. And as we pulled it apart and kind of understood the story better, maybe I made that up. You know what I mean?
Or it was very unlikely.
Or it's very unlikely. But the vagueness at which he approached that he had gone through the rear axle, I'm doing air quotes for our listeners at home, sold me on the fact that my brakes were perfectly fine on this truck. And when the reality of the situation, they weren't at all. Now, I've actually maintained contact with that guy. I don't think that he's inherently a bad person. He's actually expressed some remorse in letting the truck go because he liked it so much, he's actually talked about trading back for it and all that kind of stuff. He had a regular cab Pete, which I thought was funny. He wanted me to trade in plus some cash on my end and blah 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 because he wanted the International back, And I was like, nah, I'm good at that time. What am I going to do with a regular cab Pete?
And that's that seller's remorse. He was missing it.
It was that seller's remorse. He obviously was remorseful. He wasn't guilty at that point. He was remorseful because he liked the truck and he didn't have it anymore. I am struggling the biggest with getting rid of my big red Ram because I know that I'm going to be remorseful once it's gone. But sitting in the field rotting away, somehow I've compartmentalized that that's an okay purgatory for it.
Yeah.
So why is that I'm okay with it sitting in the field because I know that I own it and maybe one day I'll go out there and rebuild it versus, hey, I'm going to do a couple things to it and then sell it appropriately. And I tried selling it. I mean, if folks saw the listings or whatnot, I had a Ram project, I had 2.5 full 1-ton trucks that I was letting go. And I think where was I? 8,500 for 2.5 1-ton Cummins Ram trucks, and
it just needed to be mixed and matched, put together to make one good one.
Right.
All the parts pretty much are there.
All the parts are there, and nobody will touch it with a 10-foot pole right now. It's the most fascinating thing, most fascinating thing. And now I'm looking down the pipe and going, okay, well, maybe I polish some things up on the red one, throw some batteries at it, do the stuff that I thought other people would be willing to do for a deal, and I don't have to then disclose it, right? Because again, I said the Ram, I said it's a project, it needs some love, and all of a sudden people thought that it doesn't run, it doesn't move, it doesn't do anything. And I'm thinking, well, you can drive it down the road right now. I wouldn't, but you can.
Yeah.
No, I would. That's not true.
I was going to say, you totally
I
were.
literally did drive it down the road as in its current shape.
Yeah, and then we were like, did you know? And you're like, nope, didn't know it was that bad.
Nah,
oh, well.
didn't know.
Didn't drive like it was.
Didn't drive like that. It may or may not have upper control arms in the front axle. It may actually only be a 3-link front axle under a Cummins truck.
I think it's closer to a 2-link.
Meh.
The one, it's just because we always look at listings, it's just a problem we have. I saw one over the weekend that just feel like is a good intro to this. Guy said partially restored car needs towed.
Okay.
How's it restored then?
It's a paint job. It's a paint job.
I was like, danger.
As far as I'm concerned, 88% of quote unquote restorations that you see on Marketplace, and the average buyer is smitten by it, is just absolutely smitten, and it's just hack paint work and paint and body work.
Yep.
As just and they're not guilty. They're not remorseful because they believe in that moment that they've done a good job and they are selling you a piece of their dream, right?
Yep.
And that's the challenge is, what is the average consumer expecting versus what are we as automotive enthusiasts, us ourselves and other people like us, wanting to disclose or wanting better for that person. So it brings us back to Scott L's question. Does he sell that Jeep knowing that it's a 10-year-old vehicle, that we've already had to invest. We had to rebuild a transfer case in it, that it needs a handful of things because it's sat for a year or better. Does he sell it to a person who's not automotively inclined at all, who's in need? He's willing to give them a deal in the process even.
And my opinion is yes. You sell that. You make sure that you've given all the information to the best of your ability, and there's no guilt. That buyer has made that decision and has accepted that deal. They are going to deal with what comes with that.
And I will say yes.
What if it breaks down? What if it breaks down in 2 weeks from now?
And
Well,
I will.
that's on them to repair it.
And I will.
What if your brand new car breaks down in 2 weeks?
I will add to the fact that they are going to get a more quality vehicle from Scott L. with the consciousness of all the things that he feels it needs and has done repairs, because he is actively interested in that vehicle. So it's much better for them to purchase that vehicle than they go to a car lot and buy someone else's cast off that they were just trying to get by and not doing maintenance and not doing repairs and didn't actually care about how the vehicle was maintained. Both could break down in 2 weeks, but the one that has been looked after and actually, he's showing he cares by the fact that he's thinking about, well, should I or shouldn't I? That's actually showing it's a better vehicle right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Because, spoiler alert, not everyone is out to get you. There are some. You have to be street smart a little bit. But just because someone is disclosing things about it does not mean that they are trying to get one over on you. You need to go and interact with that person. You need to talk to them. You need to feel them out. That's how you know if it's a good thing or not. You got to put your feet on the ground, go look at the vehicle, drive it, see what you think. And it doesn't matter if you only know how to put gas in it versus you know how to rebuild it. In a nutshell.
What happens to your relationship, though, if you believe that you have honestly disclosed your knowledge of this vehicle and you extend that to them and then the engine blows?
If you have a good relationship, nothing.
Yep.
Mm.
And
If you have a bad relationship, it is the end of the world for that relationship.
So maybe it's about choosing that individual wisely in the sale of it.
well, it's also something I've learned from growing up, because my dad would not talk about things, how they bothered him or that kind of stuff. He would talk otherwise, but he would not talk to that person. And so I have changed to where, well, if this is bothering me, then it's valid and I need to talk to them about that. And literally when I sold my JK, I said, I like you as a person, I like you as a customer, and I don't want anything with the sale to affect that. Just come right out and say it.
Mm-hmm.
And now that is out in the air, they know how you feel, and they also know how they feel about it. And in my opinion, that's what Scott L does is with this person. He says, hey, I value your relationship. I don't want this vehicle. It's a vehicle. Things can happen. I don't want that to negatively impact us. How do you feel about that?
Right. Do you still want to buy it from me?
Yes.
Right. Because, of course, if we look at Carvana as just an example, just because I have some experience there, they do have some pretty decent insulatory warranties available to you that basically within X, Y, and Z period of you purchasing the vehicle, you've got like 7 days. If you don't like the vehicle, you just call them up and they come and take it away.
Yep.
Now, I'll say something about that in a hot second. But they go, hey, yep, not for you, even though you signed all the paperwork, you did all the things. It's like kind of like the trying your shoes on before you buy it situation. Likewise, there is 30 days or some period of time that if you have some type of mechanical failure, they likewise will assist in the transaction or the repair of that as well. So there are some insurances when you purchase through through Carvana or one of those services, much like you used to expect out of your local dealership, right? Mm-hmm. Dealerships have their place, but realistically, there was a time and a place where people believed, the guy who worked in the service department, he's my neighbor. The salesman goes to my church, that kind of thing. And so you would go down to the local dealership and they would take good care of you, and then they would make sure that your vehicle was up to your standards. The challenge is as prices became more competitive, as salespeople and service people became more transient, as models at the dealership became just shifted from what they originally were intended to be. Now maybe you can't get a reliable vehicle as regularly, or if you do and there's a problem, you might not get the follow through that you were hoping to get, right? You don't have that relationship piece.
To me, the biggest challenge of a vehicle from a dealership, if you're not vetting it yourself, checking it over and that kind of stuff, is they are an isolatory from the previous owner.
Yes.
So the other owner may have known that pinion seal had a slight weep. They don't tell that dealership that, which most people don't. They have no idea. So
Right.
unless their service department is good, they look at it and say, hey, this pinion seal has a leak. Should we fix it or not? And then they have to look at their money and go, well, can we afford to fix this and still sell it at the price point we want to? That is a real thing. They may or may not still fix that. Now you buy the vehicle, you have no idea, and you still could have that issue. Just because it comes from a dealership does not mean it's been completely repaired and perfectly maintained.
I think that's one of the biggest things that our customers have experienced is a lot of dealerships pick up Jeeps because they draw attention.
Yep.
All right. They pick up a modified Jeep, they stick it out by the road, and inevitably they get a couple people to stop in because of that vehicle alone.
Yep.
And the challenge is, specifically one that I can speak to, a customer was in Florida. Jeep got traded into a Mercedes-Benz dealership. What the heck does that Mercedes-Benz dealership care about a modified Jeep? They never should have taken that trade in. And if they did, they should have put it on a truck transport to auction immediately.
Yep.
But you know what? They didn't. They didn't because it attracted a different market demographic to their dealership, put it right out in the front yard in front of the showroom. That Jeep was a piece of trash. It was a hot piece of trash. Had garbage lift kit, garbage tires, everything. Looked cool from 20 feet away.
Yep.
Handled poorly. You know what? The Mercedes-Benz salesman goes, it's a Jeep. It's supposed to be like that. No, not at all. It shouldn't be like that at all. But they don't know any better because they sell well-tuned, well-built, German-made cars every day.
Yep.
And they said, well, it's a Jeep. It's supposed to handle like that. So they put it out front. Customer goes to the dealership. They think, cool, it's at a high-quality dealership.
Yep.
It must be a high-quality vehicle. Nope. Hard pass. And this is what I was going to say about Carvana, where we kind of got into a challenge was, most recently, my father bought a Jeep. He and I kind of picked out a pretty cool JT Overland on that there Carvana. And in order for him to purchase this Jeep, he had to sell back his Colorado. Well, this is an interesting piece when it comes to seller's remorse. And of course, he wanted to disclose everything. He was trying to give him the hitch and everything. I was like, like his ball hitch insert. I was like, that's not part of their vehicle.
They don't even want it.
They don't even want that. They don't know what it is. You know what I mean? He was trying to be so honest. So like, well, here, this goes with the vehicle. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. You know what I mean? And I think we pulled the weather techs out to give them to somebody else. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. Like you don't have to feel guilty about the fact that the weather techs were in there and now you're taking
If you
them out.
accessorize the vehicle, the accessories are yours. That's not part of the sale.
Right. But the big challenge was he had to load that truck up on that Carvana delivery, and that truck went away. And he loved that truck. And now he's got this new truck, which he has yet to actually love, right?
Yeah.
It was unusual for him to do this distance purchase, this remote purchase that many of us have accepted as normal at this point. And there was a little bit of seller's remorse on his part because he didn't yet love the Jeep. He was still comparing it to the Colorado at first for the first couple days. And he kept going, but now I can give the Jeep back. I can't get my Colorado back.
Yeah.
You sign off on one.
Yep.
Right? You can give the JT back in their situation, but that mean that they're going to give you your truck back.
Yeah.
Now, the cool thing is he is a Jeep guy, right? And so quickly the reasons why he loved the Colorado, there were more reasons to love the JT.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it quickly kind of washed away. But there was that brief moment for, 48, 72 hours where there was this seller's remorse and then this stark realization that it was like, well, I can't get my truck back now. You know, whereas at least if it's at the local dealership, you drive over there and you go, hey, you know what? Have this truck back. I'd actually like mine. And they might work with you. I'd like to think so, but I don't know. That would be interesting. I guess at the end of the day, like we had mentioned, if you are willing to disclose appropriately, if you are honest, if you're just trying to offer somebody a fair experience, I think you go ahead and you sell that vehicle. You know?
Yep.
You know, as far as disclosure, I think you disclose what you're comfortable with, but in my specific situation, I feel like I've probably disclosed too much, things that realistically are trivialities, and
you made a big deal of it, so now the buyers are making a big deal.
The buyers are making a big deal out of it. Yep. So maybe learn from my lesson, and if you are trying to sell something, even though you're not trying to get a premium price, you know, be ambiguous at first, see who's actually interested, and kind of reveal accordingly in the process. Once you actually get some people who've bought that idea of that vehicle initially.
Yep.
I think we're going to go ahead and see if Rob Morgan's available, get him on air, and have him tell us about an upcoming wheeling event you may want to attend.
Yep. So as soon as Rob gets signed in, we'll bring him live on the screen. Should just take a moment here. And then, let's see. Rob, can you hear us?
I can see him. He's looking swell. Good. Everybody can just, our listeners at home,
There
you
we
know,
go.
I'm going to paint you a picture of Rob.
How about
no.
Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
No.
Yes. Yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, well, that's better.
That's better. Hi,
It
Rob. Good
helps
morning.
when I unmute it.
It helps when Jeffrey is.
When Jeff actually does his job, it works out better.
It's amazing if he actually does his job.
It's amazing.
Go figure.
You know.
My wife is looking for that mute button for me all the time. You have to get that to her.
I have to share that with her. Oh my goodness.
And then, real quick in the comments before we get to you, Rob, is Geauga Jeepers had said, watch for the old "it runs, it just needs the carb cleaned."
Oh,
Yep, classic.
Rev tune up just needs a carb clean. Just needs a battery. Bring your own battery. Oh, there's a bunch of them. We could get into the buying selling conversation for sure. Rob, what's good, man? I saw some reels you posted. I think you were out at the property again this weekend, right?
I was, and I just wanted to start with the fact that I wheeled all weekend and never broke a hub. So that was great.
Because you were on the Ford hubs now.
No, I was in the Grand Cherokee.
Oh, and if you don't know what that's about, folks, that was Rob went out in the fun run with us with his highly modified YJ. More YJs at Southington Off-Road than I've seen YJs, you know, in years at this point, honestly. But you were out with us.
That's because you don't go to Southington very often.
I guess.
You don't wheel very often, period.
Oh.
Yeah, there was a lot of YJs there. I'll give them that, though. I had been
There
there.
There was. But anyways, you broke hubs. I don't know, kind of like you were drinking water at that point until you put all the Fords on.
I just love that you were just in the middle of the trail, just rebuilding them. No problem. Just
Perfect.
Keep going.
So,
3 times.
Good
yeah.
time. Good time.
yeah.
So
Anyway,
what's going on? Where are people wheeling? What should they be looking forward to in the next few weeks?
we're here to talk about the Bantam Trail Fest. So if you're not familiar with Bantam, we have a big event in June, and then we have a smaller event that's October 11th through 13th this year at our Bantam Quarry at Kildew in Portersville, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
So for this fall event, it's much smaller. We limit it to about 500 Jeeps. There's still room to register, so please do. But we have limited vendors, and it's not as big an event, but it's more trail focused.
Yeah, and I think that's a great initiative. We've been trying to support that since the very first year that it was launched. We'll be there, and you've kind of taken over Kildew and some of the coordination stuff there. Is that correct?
I actually tripped and fell into the off-road manager's position, so I am in charge of all of our off-road activities, both at the June event and at the fall event at Kildew. So I've managed both properties throughout the year.
Awesome. And Friends of Bantam Friends of Bantam. I don't know. There's an official term there. They purchased the Kildu Quarry some years ago, right?
Yes, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe
Right.
5. I'm not sure exactly, but yes, we as in the festival purchased that 250 some acre piece of property. So
All
we
right,
have
so it's about
the ability
250
to do whatever
acres.
we want to on that property.
Yeah, very cool. And it's kind of as the name indicates, it's an old quarry. It's an old rock or stone quarry, right?
Yeah, I believe it was a limestone quarry.
Okay.
Once upon a time.
Right. And so what kind of trails do we have available there? What's the festival? What's the Bantam Trail Fest look like? What can people expect?
Historically, we've always had some challenges there due to various factors. And when I came in, I wanted to try to alleviate those challenges. So we've changed everything. So if you've been there in the past, had a great experience or a bad experience, give us another shot because we've changed a lot. So we've made the trails shorter and added more trails. So in the hopes of keeping more Jeeps moving all the time. So we have, of course, green trails for your stock Jeeps, blue trails for our modified Jeeps, and we do have a black trail for our more extreme people.
And is it the weekend all trail riding? I know you mentioned some vendors. What's the experience there?
We do have vendors at the staging area. You can come and go from the vendors anytime you want. We also have we're having a pumpkin race on Friday this year, which is new and just something fun. You put some wheels on a pumpkin and roll it down a hill. Not super familiar with that because that's not
off-roading. It's not off. It's not your realm, huh?
Are we putting 40s on a pumpkin?
Jeep.
I think we're putting 40s on a pumpkin. That sounds fantastic to me.
We need to make a little roller and just set the pumpkin on it. There we go.
Oh my goodness. The tires are basically touching each other.
Yep.
Come up with.
Right? Yeah, I mean the first of all, the Kildu property for me is absolutely a stunning piece of property. Not everybody who attends Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival goes over to Kildu, despite the fact that it's probably less than 10 miles away, honestly. They're close, if not that. But it's a stunning piece of property. 7? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
And getting in and out of it, you actually have some of these beautiful highland and lowland rolling Pennsylvania hills, right? And if you hit it just right, depending on the time of day, their sunrise or sunset, you get these kind of epic scenic vistas. I love about Trailfest is, and Bantam Group embraces it solidly with their marketing. It takes place at kind of peak color change of the trees. And so you get this incredible tree changeover experience while off-roading this property that, quite frankly, isn't available to too many people except for in June and October, right? They don't do open runs there at any other time. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. It is private property and it's treated as such. It's gated, so it's not open all the time. We've looked at other options for things in the future, but at this point, it's just those 2 times a year, unless you're one of our trail guides, and then we get in there to do trail work, and that's one of the perks of being a trail guide is a little more access to the property.
Absolutely. So, but if you're a listener and you're thinking about, hey, what kind of notch in my belt, of different wheeling opportunities, if you're someone who is from Western Pennsylvania and you're looking for a guided Western Pennsylvania, Southern New York, Northern West Virginia, whatever, you're not looking for a huge off-road experience. You don't want to go to a huge park and kind of get lost on your own volition. This is guided trail rides, correct?
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about Bantam overall is we're very controlled, small groups with a trail guide. If you get yourself in trouble, there's always somebody there to help you out. So it's a great place for new off-roaders to come to learn, for sure.
What is the date for this event?
October 11 through 13.
Okay, so this is an October event, and what's really fun is in past years when we've been there, we get to see people decorating their Jeeps for Halloween and then taking those out on the trails. There's been several where like those decorations aren't going to survive.
Oh yeah.
But it's really fun to see and see all the unique things. Patty Joe last year with skeletons had skeletons posed in different
a couple
ways.
of years actually. Now
Yeah.
the skeletons have randomly come out and get posed in different ways.
Yep. So
it's
she's-
almost like at one of your amusement parks when you're doing the train ride and there's little staged scenes along the way.
Yep.
Just something kind of fun, almost like an Easter egg of your own experience to see the kind of the thematic inclusion as you're out wheeling.
Yeah.
Kind of neat. So what has been your experience as far as working on the trails and cutting them? And is there changes to the trails? I know you said you added some. Do we still have one black trail? How many blues? How many greens? If you're a newbie, what should you be expecting to do per trail, right? Can I go out there on highway tires?
Neil just asked you every question at once, so good luck.
Every single one. And I want you.
Well, I still want to backtrack to the whole Halloween theme.
Okay.
We actually do have a theme every year, and this year is Killer Clowns, I believe is what we're calling it. So it's going to be a bunch of creepy clown guys running around in the woods for the Friday night ride.
Nice.
So
And
that's
there's a Friday night ride. How do you get registered for that?
all the registration is through the same website. It's Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. Go to the Trail Fest link, and it'll give you all your options there.
Okay.
So there's
Okay.
also the Bantam Bash. Before we get back to the trails, the Bantam Bash is a Saturday night event. There's a dinner, a huge raffle. You guys are participating in the raffle and
Yes, sir.
are offering up a really nice light package.
We are. Yep.
So there's
Our partnership with Nacho Lights. Yep.
That's right. I think there's $11,000 in prizes total given away at that. So you don't even have to go to the dinner. You can buy a prize only ticket. You don't have to be in person.
It's awesome.
And what I think is really cool, and I've talked to Patty Joe about this before, and Rob kind of hit the nail on the head. You have basically 500 registered Jeeps, and you can buy some tickets for the bash independently or the prize package. But basically, prize package to participants, your odds are actually way increased over your standard Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival, your Smoky Mountain, those types of bigger events where there are big donations, but there's huge attendance. This is actually an event that kind of has big donations and small or capped attendance. It's kind of cool that way.
There's some big ticket items too. There's a full set of Cooper tires.
Yeah. There's some cash on the table from a number of businesses and manufacturers and vendors that are contributed to this, to this event. So if I'm listening and I'm a newbie on stock, highway terrain type tires, is there something for me to do there?
Yeah, I was going to go back to your 17 questions at once. So yes,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Perfect.
our
I'll take
trails-
note.
Our green trails for stock Jeeps are very stock capable. We have one of our trail guides in a Renegade, and she's kind of our staple. If she can do it, pretty much anybody can do it. Now she's modified a bit. She's on better tires. So weather dependent. If we get some rain, those street tires might be a challenge in some of our trails that are a little more grassy, a little less gravel.
Mhm.
So there could be some challenges, but again, that's why we're there. We're going to adapt as we go. If something's a problem, we can dump some gravel in there. We can reroute it. We have alternate trails for any of our trouble areas.
Okay.
So we've done a lot of work to create solutions before they become problems.
Okay. And are there requirements to be on any of the trails?
Yeah, they're all listed on when you sign up. You're going to have to click that box that said you read our requirements and you follow them. We require tow hooks.
Mhm.
Blue and black are front and rear tow hooks. Green, I believe, is just front tow hooks, but double check those requirements. As you go up in trail conditions, your requirements obviously go up. There's tire size requirements based on Jeep wheelbase. Black trails, you're going to need at least one locker. You're going to need a winch. And sometimes we have to use those things.
Sure. I mean, that's part
Actually,
of the...
we had training over the weekend when we were at the property for our trail guides. We did some recovery training for them. So again, another perk of the trail guides is getting to learn some things through the process. So, a lot of our trail guides aren't real comfortable yet coming in, and they appreciate the extra time on the trails and some learning from us more experienced folk.
So how many times did you intentionally get yourself stuck so they had to do the recovery practice?
we didn't actually get stuck. We talked about it, but it was pretty dry. It's hard to find a spot. I'm sure I could have found a way, but we did most of it.
And it is a really cool thing if you find yourself really bitten by the bug of off-roading, of off-road adventures. Getting involved and helping trail guide is a staple for a lot of our listeners and customers because they just love all of the aspects of it. Are there other opportunities for volunteers for this event? Are you guys still looking for volunteers in any capacity?
At this point, our volunteers are pretty good for this event. I mean, we typically try not to turn people away, so we always need help. But we certainly, our June event, we need 400 plus volunteers for that. For this fall event, we have lots of trail guides, lots of recovery people needed. We have people in staging, people manning different smaller activities. We need a lot of people at the bash. So there's always opportunities for volunteers, even if you don't have a Jeep.
Right. How would people get involved if they wanted to?
Again, that's all done through the registration process.
Okay.
As you're going down through your check boxes, you can check that you want to be a participant or a volunteering participant or just a volunteer. So as you're registering, it gives you all the options that you might need. And if you have questions, you have concerns, there's the info@bantam.com email address. You can reach out and get your answers satisfied by a handful of us that can respond to that thing.
That monitor that as well. Yeah, and as far as the day is concerned, or the weekend, I know you said it's the 11th through the 13th, correct?
Yep.
Just reiterate
Friday, Saturday,
that.
Sunday, yes.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You can kind of come and go as you please, or are they scheduled times?
Now, this is scheduled times. When you register as a participant, you are going to pick your trail time.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you can pick more than one.
Okay.
I'm sure you could buy more than one, but I think a typical registration is for one time slot. It's a 4-hour time slot.
Oh, okay. So that's a pretty healthy time slot. And as I mentioned, it's a beautiful rolling hills of Western Pennsylvania. Not a ton of resources immediately available. A couple, handful of gas stations or convenience stores probably within a 7-10 mile radius, but fill up before you get there, pack some snacks or eat at one of the food vendors on site. They usually have some pretty decent offerings as well. Kind of go down into this bowl, this quarry, kind of outcropping, if you will. Park, go across the road. You have a big staging area. You have a vendor area, and then head off into the woods, right? For your time frames. Pretty much it?
Yep, absolutely. So that was, you asked earlier, part of your multiple questions is that there are 2 blue trails, 2 green trails, and 1 longer black trail. We didn't break the black trail up because we don't get the volume at the black trail. So we left that as 1 longer trail, whereas the greens and blues are broken up into smaller trails. And we've done a fair amount of work on all of the trails to add some obstacles, clean up some things, make some things a little more challenging. So there's a lot of changes on every trail. So I think it's going to be pretty exciting.
Now, with the time slots that we're talking about, when you purchased your 4-hour time slot, my understanding that you can just continuously go on different trails during that time slot. You're not just one ride and you're done.
Absolutely. If you come out there and you want to get warmed up and you want to run a green trail, and then you come back around, then you can go ahead and run a blue trail. You could step up to a black trail. You could rerun the same green trail. You're open to run whatever trails you're capable for.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think that one of the takeaways, your black trails, there's actually quite a few customers who run the black trail, have a lot of fun with them. They're mainly downhill, not a ton of aggressive hill climbs, but some pretty gnarly downhill runs. Is that correct?
We've got a little more uphill than we have in the past. Yes, our downhills, our waterfalls, we're calling them, are pretty aggressive, but it's downhill. We have spotters at those to keep you safe and keep you controlled. I just put out a video this morning showing the one on my The Real Daddy Jeep on Instagram. So there is a video out there you can check out.
I checked it out. It looked awesome.
Couple uphills that are pretty fun.
Excellent. And I can attest, personally, a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to run with you, and I don't know who the spotter was. I just simply was unaware at that time of who it was. But realistically, the spotters, the volunteers at that time were so on point. And I had it was a great experience where it was basically I had to come down the quote unquote waterfall, and the spotter said, "Hey, you're going to put your tire here, and basically you're going to goose it and just do a little bump, and you're going to drop over, and your tire's going to drop right onto this side of this boulder." And going into the line, I could see what the spotter was recommending me to do, but I couldn't. I wouldn't have picked it myself, right? And much like, when we had the opportunity to wheel together over the weekend and we got our differentials hung up, basically what the spotter was asking me to do was to go through this obstacle and hit it in such a way that would allow my diff not to hang up on the boulder, right? If I recall right. But it required me to do exactly what he said. Tire up here, goose it a little bit, brake, and I'm going to drop right over. And sure enough, it did exactly that. I listened to the spotter. That individual was on point with their instruction. I did what they asked me to do, and what my Jeep did in response was exactly what it was supposed to do. It was the coolest reaffirmation of the volunteers, of the spotters, and it was a great run altogether, until I lit my Jeep on fire. But that's a side story.
Yeah, that might have happened.
A little bit.
And the spotter is the one that identified that, too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, there's sparks underneath there. Maybe not. Anything you want to leave us with, Rob?
I think that really covers most of what I wanted to cover. I'm excited about the event. I think it's going to be very different for our participants. There's still room to register, so please do.
Excellent. Yep, we will have a healthy prize showing out there for you folks. We'll be there in some capacity. What that is, I can't promise you right now, just because we've always got something going on. I think we're going to wind it down for today. We are going to be starting our Race Jeep series in the coming weeks. And we've got a lot of cool content there for you. We're going to take 2 weeks to do that. And we'll be talking about going fast in Jeeps. I don't even know if Scott knows what his assignment is yet.
I do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Scott understands the assignment.
He does.
Well, folks, we've got a lot of Jeeps to build. We've had a great experience with you. We appreciate all of your love, your support, your investment in this podcast. And we look forward to bringing it to you again in the very near future. Until then, Jeep on.
Keep on. Keep on.
Keep on.
Thank you, Rob.